Kia ora, no mai, haere mai, whakatau mai. Welcome to Share Lunch, brought to you by Sharesies with BusinessDesk. My name is Brooke Roberts. I'm one of the co-founders and co-CEOs at Sharesies. Today we're talking Sorted Money Month, which is this August, and will be all about helping Kiwis maximise their money, especially in this current climate. And to discuss this, we're joined by Tom, the personal finance lead at sorted.org.nz. So kia ora, Tom.
Kia ora, great to be with you.
Nice to have you here. Before we get started, we just want to make sure you hear some important information.
Investing involves risk. You might lose the money you start with. We recommend talking to a licensed financial advisor. We also recommend reading product disclosure documents before deciding to invest. Everything you're about to see and hear is current at the time of recording.
Well, welcome and thanks so much for joining us on Shared Lunch. Now, I know that there's been Money Week for many years now, I think about 10 years. Why has it evolved to Money Month this year?
Well, there's so many weeks during the year. You know, you have language weeks, you have this. And we wanted, behind the scenes, it was always a month of activity behind the scenes anyway, preview, post-view, all that. You know, to tweak your finances, which is what we're really looking for, changing our habits, our behaviors, you really need a little bit more than a week. So it's quite easy to remember. It's August, it's Money Month, and sometime during that month, if people can make some concrete steps, some tangible steps to improve their financial positions, it's the ideal time.
What are some of the tweaks in people's behaviors and actions around money that you would love to see start to happen this Money Month?
There's a fair bit because people find themselves in different situations, and you know, this is quite a challenging time. More than half of the people we speak to when we survey them are really feeling the pinch, actually, and that can be because of cost of living, because of inflation, change of interest rates. There are a lot of different. So people's situations, we can't say you know, a couple, but overall, the two things that were really, you know, that's really close to my heart for people is for them to get to a more resilient place so that when things happen in the short term, they're more prepared. And then in the long term, that they're more in a position that their financial position is always trending upward. So over that long term, that they're really growing their finances. Those are the two things that are really...
I'm intrigued on what you see Kiwi attitudes towards money and getting sorted.
So I mentioned before that, you know, over half of the people we survey are really feeling the pinch. But what you have is really two camps a little bit. On one side, you have people who are swimming in terms of their finances or swimming happily along. And the other side are people who are treading water and actually starting to sink. And unfortunately, we're tracking the gap between those two. And that gap, unfortunately, is increasing. And particularly, for example, women compared to men, that's growing even faster. And the two areas that are getting squeezed are both mortgage holders and renters are feeling the squeeze a bit more. Happily, we're seeing that money is really a topic of conversation. So people are talking about it more, and you know, there's evidence that we're paying more attention to our finances. So you know, Money Month should just leverage that. You know, there's already that attention. Let's see if we can make some changes. Let's see if we can change some behaviors. And I think what we're seeing is generally a move from that short-term focus into more of a long-term focus, which is really, really good. And people are cautious about spending during this time. And so that's why probably we're seeing inflation also get more under control because, you know, people are more cautious in that regard. So overall, those are the themes that we're able to say.
So you mentioned that there's more disparity or more inequity when it comes to money, and you mentioned between men and women, and we've seen that with KiwiSaver. It used to be a 20% difference in KiwiSaver balances, and recently it's shown that it's 25%, so it's growing.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is the case?
I think a lot of it comes down to, and we're looking into this more because it wasn't exactly clear what the factors are, but a lot of it will come down to contributions, We'll see if it comes down to risk level over time. It didn't appear to be. So more work needs to be done in that regard. But yes, it is not trending in the right direction.
And so with Money Month, who gets involved and what does it, how do you activate Aotearoa?
So we're lucky to have something called the National Strategy for Financial Capability here in the country, and that has a network of partner organizations who get involved for Money Month. And depending on what they do and what their offering is, they can really plug into this overall platform and this collective focus that we have on personal finance during that time. So it's flexible, but it's also collective, that whatever we can contribute in order to helping people improve their finances, maximize their money during that time, it's quite easy to plug into.
And what does sorta.org.nz specifically provide in this case?
Yeah, so in Money Month, we provide some common resources, some shared collateral that people can share. We've got Money Month this year. The theme is pause, get sorted. Mm-hmm. And so that pause is really the first step for people to slow down a second, take a moment. What is it that I could do during this month that would really make a meaningful difference to my financial position?
So when we think pause, what do you want people to be thinking in that pause, or what do you want them to take that time to really recalibrate on?
Well, it really depends where they're at on their financial journey. So, for example, we've got sorted 6 steps. You know, if you don't know where to start, we've actually have a whole set of steps that you can go through. And, for example, step 1 would be putting together a starter safety net of $1,000 if you don't have it, and that can be for all those unforeseen emergencies. Step 2 might be sorting out your KiwiSaver. Step 3, tackling debt, high interest debt that you might be carrying. Step 4 is covering your people, your money, your stuff. So all of that insurance part in there. Step 5 would be running your retirement number. Take a long-term look just for a second to see what you're on track and how that fits with your goals. And step 6 is really about your personal goals and your household's goals and what you're aiming to achieve and getting on track towards those.
And when you look at our society and the kind of money situations a lot of people are in at the moment, what would be the advice for around, or I know not really advice, but the ways to think about debt when you're taking that pause and thinking about through those steps?
Yeah, I like to think of debt as like fire.
Okay.
Because it's something that can bring you well-being, but it's also something that can get out of control. So you got to make sure that you're a master and that it's working for you and that you're not just working for it.
It's controlled fire. Yeah. That you can put out when over time.
And those things can rage out of control. Like that image is helpful. It only goes so far, but it really is like that, because if it's not working for you, if it's not really warming your house, it can really get out of control without you realizing it. It's sort of, so depending on what the interest rates are, what you're paying, what the debt is for example, if it's something productive like your education or like a property that can grow in value over time, these are productive ways of using debt. But for other things that we might be borrowing for, it actually might be not improving and actually impacting negatively our financial position.
And is that, say, examples of like buy now, pay laters, or on things that aren't?
Well, the trouble with buy now, pay later is having too many of them on the go and overextending yourself. So in the short term, you're looking at those installments and they look doable, but actually you've committed to repaying a lot more. And if you have too many going on, but other things like credit cards are notoriously sticky in terms of the debt you can get yourself into, and because of the interest rates involved, some of those store cards can be 25% or something like that. They can keep you on a debt treadmill for years and years and years, way longer than you ever anticipated.
Yeah, because just as interests or returns can compound and grow over time, obviously interest on loans and can compound over time too, and can kind of create that downward spiral. So part of that pause is to hey, let's pause and really watch that and get that under control.
Exactly. The longer they linger for, the more expensive they get.
Yeah. And you also mentioned $1,000 around that first step. Yeah. Tell me about why $1,000 and what.
Well, if you think of a lot of the things that can happen that are unexpected, that somebody might, whack on a credit card and actually end up carrying that debt for a trip to the vet, new tires for the car, a car repair, unforeseen dental trip, anything like that. It helps. We started with that because it helps people get into that habit of saving. So you might be building that $1,000. Maybe you might be selling some things around the house or on Trade Me or something like that. But pretty much, if you get into a habit of setting aside even a small amount to build up that $1,000, it starts to reinforce a habit. And you're like, well, I can do that. Now I can save for other goals that I have. And we thought it was more manageable too, because like a fully funded emergency fund might be 3 to 6 months worth of expenses typically. And if you present that to people at first and they've never even started saving at all, it's quite overwhelming. So $1,000 to start with, starter safety net, starter emergency fund, and it's much more doable.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the things you mentioned there is exactly why we started Sharesies Save, actually, because we wanted to have something where people could access it when they needed that money, but also still get the interest rates that are out there at the moment too, and as that's been going up, being able to have access to that. So it's a little bit of reason why that
helpful.
save part is there too. And talking about the rising inflation and rising interest rates, have you noticed more people seeking tools and ways to manage their money? And conversely, are people seeking to make the most of the higher interest rates for on-call and say term deposit accounts?
Well, just to that last part, we definitely hope so, and we definitely can. Yeah. But to the first part of your question, we put together a cost of living hub on Sorted because during this time people are really stretching their dollars as far as possible. They're seeing our food expenses, for example, really climb and having to manage and to recalibrate household budgets. And so in that cost of living hub, there's been a high demand for that. And we've been able to put people towards solutions that are out there. For example, no and low interest loans that are out there as an alternative to some of these less safe ways of borrowing, like a payday loan or something like that, much higher interest rates that can really do damage.
What are examples of, microfinance or no interest loans that are available?
So Tangata Finance, for example, put out a great product. And then there's Good Shepherd as well that has good loans, that runs good loans. We like to refer people to the Money Talks helpline that there is. So that's 0800-345-123. It's a free helpline for people, and it connects them with these services that are available and the network of financial mentors that there is throughout the country.
Who answers that call?
So Money Talks is a team that's funded by FinCap, which is a nonprofit funded by MSD. So they're a great team. My hat's off to them all the time because they are really on the front line, on the coalface, answering people's calls, even after hours on weekends. The stuff they do is really heroic to talk you through. And you can even use their service anonymously if you don't want to give any information about yourself and just talk to somebody about your financial situation.
It's interesting to think about others, for people that might be listening to this, they might be thinking, I might want to reach out to my, to that helpline myself, but also might be thinking, I know somebody else in my life who could really benefit from that. Do you have any insights or ideas of how they could broach those conversations this Money Month?
I was thinking the same thing. I mean, for a lot of our audience here, and it's great to be with you, but it might be someone who you're close to, someone in your, not just in your household, in your close friend circle, for example, who actually could really benefit from a service like that. But it's hard to broach the subject. And we've got a lot of material on Sorted in that Now We're Talking space that really talks about how to have success successful money conversations. Many of them are with your partner, but even with friends and things like that, how to say, hey, how are you okay with money? It actually comes naturally when your friends are, are you okay with money for things like this? How's it going? Can I do anything? Do you need help? All that. But to make it easier, we've put a lot of resources on Sorted to help people have the money talk.
If you've got you've got your emergency fund, you've got at least set $1,000, you know where your KiwiSaver is, you know what your retirement can look like with that, and you're active in that regard. You got your debt under control, or you understand it really well, and you've got an active plan. That next part of going, if something happened to me or someone around me, are we prepared to does my will explain what I really want to happen with these assets I've got and the money that I have? Do I have insurance to ensure that I am, if something did happen to me, that I was able to get an income if I wasn't able to work, or life insurance in that instance? What are some other ways that people need to think about their money and the impact it can have on others if something happened to you?
Because there's so many products out there, insurance products in particular, and they're so configurable. There's so many different ways that you can configure a life insurance product. What we advise people to start is to really cover your people, your money, and your stuff, almost in that order. It's almost like a priority sort of thing. So if you have people in your life who depend on you, how can those products really cover those people in the event that something should happen to you? And that can be products like you mentioned, like life insurance, like disability, like trauma. Those are really designed for the people close to you to keep going ahead, keep moving forward, despite you being your involvement in the picture changing. Your reality changing there. That's what those products are for. And then your money, if you're driving down the road and you run into a Maserati or something like that you don't get stuck with the bill. So how are you protecting your money? And that can also be your income protection. You have this stream of income coming in, maybe more than one, but a main stream of income that you want to protect. It's one of your biggest assets to do that. There are income protection products that are designed for that. And then finally, your stuff, the things that you owned, if they disappeared overnight, what would you do? Would you be covered in order to replace them? What position would you be in? So what we advise people to do in that case, and this is step 4 of our 6 steps to getting sorted, is really, when they can, work with an expert, work with an insurance advisor, because those are people who can really make sure that the products match your situation, fit your budget, and actually, should something go wrong, that they can actually put in that claim and make sure that you get paid in order so that life can move ahead and not come to a full stop.
That's great. What are you noticing when it comes to our understanding around investing and how to get ahead and the changes over time there?
We think that our surveys are showing potentially that people are getting more long-term in their thinking, and not just in the here and now. They're seeing more, as I think it's because we're riding through these economic cycles and things have changed radically. I mean, we've jumped 5 percentage points and more in the interest rate space in a very short time period, and that's changed people's realities overnight. Once, when money was cheap, the whole the mortgage industry and situation we have with property lay one way. As soon as money became expensive, all of a sudden people's realities were changing, and so I think that's making people a little bit more long term in their thinking. If it can do this, if it can, if there can be waves in the economy like this that we need to ride, let's think a little bit long term. What would put us in a better position over time where we can ride these out in the future?
Yeah, and it's important for it to really be understood that there's always going to be a ride. Markets are cyclical; they do go up and down. Information moves markets, which moves the volatility of certain
sentiment.
And sentiment in terms of investment. So being able to be comfortable with that and understand the behavioural economics, or how you can react or act in those moments, and ultimately, there's so much research that shows if you're building wealth over time with amounts you can afford, time in the market, not timing the market, those strategies ultimately.
It's really about panning out too, because if you're looking at, on a daily or weekly or monthly basis, how these assets are really fluctuating in their worth, and a lot of times the balances are misunderstood, right? We look at our investment balances and we think that's what we have, but no, that's just what our investments are worth at a given time, and that's always going to fluctuate depending on what's happening. And over time, if we can just pan out and see that general trend line of where things are headed, then the trend is our friend.
The trend is our friend. And you mentioned assets there, and I thought we could touch a bit on asset allocation. Can you talk us through what that is, why it's important, and what tools sort of provide?
Well, for a long time now, and you'll know this just as well as I do, we've collaborated with Sharesies in order to answer these more strategic questions, while Sharesies has really provided some really great tools in terms of the tactical decisions that you can make and really seamlessly making it easy for people to get on that on-ramp. But before that, we'd like to help people to get some of these questions right in terms of their investment mix. A lot of times we'll call it. So before heading straight to shares, that question of, well, actually, how much of my portfolio should be shares? Does it make sense for me? And to get to there, we built a great tool called the Investor Profiler on Sorted, and many times that's been sort of an on-ramp to Sharesies in the past, where people can, get some of these questions. Asset allocation is really going to drive two things: your results and your experience. Along the way, that level of volatility. And essentially with returns, we're getting paid for the amount of risk that we're taking on. So you want to make sure that risk is right for us and for the goals that we're using that money. So key question for a lot of our users is, okay, that money you're putting into shares, what's it for? What's it going to be for? And because probably for none of your investors, it's to stay there forever. It's going to be for something. It's for a given goal, and that goal has a time horizon, has a distance in time, and that can drive a lot of these decisions of what your asset allocation is and how much of that should be shares and what funds fit that same asset allocation. The tool also can give you an idea. It's a bit of a simulator, actually. You could see with a certain allocation how that's going to behave within certain parameters over time. Statistically, within 90% of the time, your results are going to be within this wedge and can give you an idea of what to expect in terms of negative returns, possibilities of loss, ups and downs along the way.
Help you mentally kind of prepare and see what risk you're up for. And so when we're talking about asset allocation or investment mix, it's of the wealth that we have, how much of it is in cash, or do you want in cash, or shares, or funds, or property, and things like that. So those are different types of investments.
And that mix is made up of the four traditional, asset classes, which are cash, bonds, or fixed interest, shares, and commercial property.
Yeah, KiwiSaver is a really important part of people's investment mix, and a lot of people in Aotearoa have KiwiSaver. It's where the majority of our wealth is too. And so being acutely aware of that and understanding the value of the dollar now compared to what it can be by the time you retire or when you're about to retire. So that's why we're quite passionate. We obviously have a KiwiSaver now too, but very passionate about anything that is really supporting people's long-term development and wealth development and knowledge around KiwiSaver. Side question, do you think changing the name of KiwiSaver, as some have suggested, might help change attitudes?
Now, it is a bit of a misnomer, and I've heard that many times, whether it should be Kiwi Invest, or did they suggest another name?
Make sure
because
people
it's
know
not
it's
really,
investing, not...
Lots of times savings and investing gets, wrapped all together, and so we spend some time on sort of, savings is actually putting money aside for the future, setting something aside investing is actually going out shopping, is going out and buying an asset that can grow in value over time. So getting that difference in there to people isn't, lots of times it's all mixed together. What we have seen in the past is when KiwiSaver is, changes have been made, when tweaks have been made, confidence in the scheme overall goes down, unfortunately, and people get a little bit nervous. So we need to look at a change like that really carefully, whether it'd be worth doing. But in the meantime, it's our job to educate people, hey, this is not just saving. This is investing.
This is investing, and also just being aware where your KiwiSaver is, given it's likely the majority of your wealth, and are you happy with what it's being invested into, because ultimately you're investing in the future you want to create too. To quickly recap, Money Month is about pause and get ahead. Yeah.
It's pause, get sorted.
Get sorted, of course. That makes sense.
Yeah, no matter what you're doing in your financial life, a pause has really been shown to work wonders in terms of just taking a moment to examine what you're doing as a routine. We're creatures of routine. So if you're spending, just that pause and walk around the block before you make that expense has been shown to really help people make better decisions. You might still make that purchase, but at least you've made sure that it fits your plan and makes sure it's going the direction you want it to.
Yeah, I know a lot of friends who fill the old online cart and then exit out and had the fun in filling it, I guess. But it is taking that moment, taking that pause, going, do I really need this? Is this really going to be beneficial? Is it towards the goals I want to have in my life? And is it going to help advance that? And if it is, then, that might help you get sorted. Thank you so much, Tom, for your time today. I really appreciate it. It's always good to connect with you over the years and see the incredible resources that Sorted provide to really help create more financial understanding here in Aotearoa. I'm excited that Money Week has expanded to Money Month and that we are really taking that time to pause and have these conversations. I am looking forward to the day where we have more financial conversations in the classrooms and in our workplaces and ultimately in our lives, because everybody is dealing with money and we're all trying to figure it out. So
yeah, there's a lot going on. Yeah, it would be good to know even more of what's happening out there.
Yeah, so we really appreciate your insight. So thank you. And thanks heaps for joining us today. Don't forget to leave us a rating if you'd like, and let us know what you'd like to hear next. Ka kite anō.